Got it. So that's the first piece of housekeeping. As always, these meetings are being recorded. If you can mute yourself when not talking, it helps. The paper shuffling is a lot of background. Just reminding us all that our mission is to create or provide a recommendation for a boundary, in the course of which, of course, we're going to discuss services and governance, etc. But the purpose in having those discussions is to get us to what is the boundary of a future incorporation. So we'll try and stay focused on that. Typically, I think we'll work through our meeting, and on each chunk, I'll try to go to the committee first and then go to our ex officio reps afterwards. And I'd invite staff to jump in at that point as well. This purpose of this meeting primarily was to give we as a committee an opportunity to share what we saw, what we heard, what we thought of the last 6 meetings that we've had. And, you know, we don't need to fill dead air space. If we run out of you know, cogent thoughts, we can stop. But I did think, you know, this meeting was kept so that while those meetings are still fresh in your mind, you could just regurgitate, you know, a couple of key thoughts that you felt were relevant. So I've got a very crude structure that I thought I would put to you, and I sent it to you in an email just a few moments ago. So we'll kind of use that as our template. Basically, you know, 2 or 3 highlights from the 6 meetings, just any general highlight that comes to mind. And we'll have a second round, 1 or 2 points relevant to selecting a boundary. Okay. And it doesn't have to be, you know, whether you think one community should be out and one community in. I think that's a little farther down the road, but just what are some of the key factors that you think need to be, we need to be keeping in mind? Consultants, if you have questions for us after that, that would be fine. So having said all that, I'll get back on track in terms of the agenda, if I can find the darn thing, which just disappeared. The first one is approval of the agenda, which I think was circulated. No, anybody see a copy of an agenda? Bob? Yeah, okay. Some did, a couple didn't. The agenda basically is approval of the agenda, receipt of December meeting minutes. Got a feeling we've actually seen February meeting minutes. Consultants are going to provide an overview of the attendance and feedback forms. Perhaps, I'm not sure if they're ready to do that yet. Okay, and then we'll go into our piece. Okay, so can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please? Made by Phyllis, seconded by Kay. All those in favor, please say aye. Okay, any opposed? Any opposed? Nope. Okay, so we'll move ahead. I'll declare that carried. Receipt of minutes for February's meeting. Those should have been sent out. Would someone like to make a motion that we could accept those as circulated? I've got David, seconded by Kay. Any discussion from anybody before we decide on that? No, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving the minutes as circulated? Okay, any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, that's carried also. Okay, over to Sherry and Alan for an overview of the feedback forms.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to provide an update of where we are right now. We're not necessarily done, so that's why I don't want to give you anything that will come next at the next meeting. But I will say, based on the attendance that we have, and we're still actually waiting to confirm one more number, but we had 135 people attend the 5 open houses in person. We have, I think, but this is the number I'm waiting to confirm because some of them might be duplicates, but about 69 online that participated. And that's logins. That's not necessarily the number of people who are attending when they do attend online. So again, the total is just over 200. At the panel discussion, we had 41 in person. So that's, oh, and those other numbers, that's not including committee members, staff, and the consultants. Same with panel discussion, we had 41 in person and another 24 online, again, not including committee members, staff, and consultants. And so far, we've had 95 completed feedback forms. We did send out, a number of people left their email addresses, so we have sent the link out to those people who left their email addresses in case they didn't get a chance to fill one out when they were there and still wanted to. So we may end up with a few more there, but we have 95% or 95 forms filled out so far. If you like, I could let you know sort of where those forms are, or we can wait until the next meeting when we have it all complete. But yeah, whatever you like, I can let you know where they're at or where they're from. Like the ones that I can easily let you know the percentages, I could share those with you now if you want to hear.
I wouldn't mind that information.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, if we get a few more, you'll have a complete report next time, and you'll have it in paper form as well. But so of those who filled out the feedback form, 14% of them were from Upper Carmi, 23% were from Eastside North, 20% from Eastside South, 34% from Okanagan Falls, and 9% from south of Okanagan Falls. 2/3 of the respondents said that they had viewed the materials on RDOS Regional Connections website, which I thought was pretty good. The question that we had where people said disagree, strongly disagree, agree, strongly agree. So the first one was about good value. Do the people feel like they have good value for the taxes that they pay to the RDOS? I've just grouped disagree and strongly agree, 35%. Agree and strongly agree, 41%. So the remainder are either in the middle, so they can say neutral or not applicable. Those are both options.
Sorry, Sherry, could you just say those two numbers again?
Yep. So the disagree and strongly disagree, 35%. And the agree and strongly agree, 41%.
Okay.
The second question was about, do you feel you get sufficient range of services through the RDOS? Disagree and strongly disagree was 30.5%. Agree and strongly agree, 50.5%. The next question was, is one electoral area director sufficient representation in my community? 53% disagreed and strongly disagreed. And 37% agreed or strongly agreed or strongly agreed. So 53% was disagree or strongly disagree, and 37% were agree or strongly agree. Service decisions made locally is of primary importance. Only 7.5% disagreed or strongly disagreed, and 78.5% agreed and strongly agreed.
Sorry, again, Sherry.
Yeah.
First number.
If you could you also just repeat the question?
Yeah. Here, I'm just gonna just make sure that I'm reading out. I have it sort of summarized in front of me, but I'm going to read out the service decisions made locally is of primary importance. I'm paraphrasing here. I could get the actual question if you like.
That's okay.
But it was 7.5% was disagree and strongly disagree. Again, those two grouped together. And 78.5 agree or strongly agreed. The next question we asked was the RDOS can continue to meet the needs and aspirations of my community? Disagree and strongly disagree was 47.5%. Agree and strongly agree, 38%. And then the last question is the one that you guys should all feel good about. Materials shared have helped me form my opinions. 96% said that they agree or strongly agree. And only one person said that they disagreed.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. And then the other one that it's easy to tally. I mean, of course, the ones in between are questions, open-ended questions. So that'll be a long list of different kinds of services and that sort of thing. But the other question that's easy to tabulate at this point was whether you are interested in being included as part of a boundary for any subsequent detailed incorporation study. Yes, 58% said yes. 28% said no, and 14% were undecided.
But really, that would have to be tied back to
Where
their
they're from. Yeah,
geographic
yeah.
community.
And we can
Yeah.
split it out in all those ways, but yeah, I just thought I'd give you the sort of the overview. And like I said, it might still be incomplete because we might still receive a few more, given that we just sent out the link on Monday to a few more people, just in case they didn't get the opportunity to submit it earlier. And yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to sort of let you know where we're at in terms of the feedback forms and attendance for each of the events.
Okay. Any comments or questions to Sherry or Alan on that mini report?
Looks like Phyllis has one there, Matt. Don't know if you can see her on your screen.
No. Sorry. There we are. Hi, Phyllis. Go ahead.
My question was just that I think some people were wondering whether if they completed the survey when they went to the, some people, that's just pretty identifiable. If they did completed the questionnaire from the public meeting, do they also complete another questionnaire from the panel discussion? Or is it supposed to be only one submission?
We sorry, yep. We only sent the feedback forms only popped up for people who were attending, and we only handed them out at the open houses. So they were intended to sort of follow up as feedback from the open houses. So we didn't provide them either to people who attended the panel discussion. If they didn't attend any of the other events, they wouldn't have seen the feedback form.
So just so I'm clear, so they went only to the people who went to the open houses, not to the people who went to the panel discussion.
That is correct.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks. Got another question from Ron.
Yes, thank you to the chair. Two questions. One, there were members who I know who came to 4 meetings in person and maybe the 5th online. And so the first question is, would they get 5 kicks at that cat?
In theory, if they wanted to, yes. It's not intended as a sort of a representative survey with so yes, if they attended, they could fill out a form. They would, for each form that they fill out, they also fill out which meeting they're attending. So for each separate meeting and where they're from. So we would also know that they, yeah.
And that leads to my second question. Could we get some more detailed breakdown later on all the questions? And two categories of breakdown. The first, which meeting they were from, and then second, which area they were from. As I said, we had people come to many meetings who were not from those areas.
Yep.
But I also know that we had questions from the floor, for example, that clarified some questions. And I'd be real interested to see if there's a variation in how it was answered. And I think that's real important for this committee to be mindful of. Thanks.
Okay,
Matt, can I just
thank
say,
you. Just-
before we move on, can I
okay,
just
go
make-
ahead, Alan.
Thanks so much. I was just going to say, and I think that excuse me, I think that Sherry's commented on this already, and I suspect the committee understands this anyway, but so I'm probably just saying stuff that you already know. But the survey, I think it's important to underscore, was not a scientific survey. So it is illustrative. It's one data point. That doesn't mean it's not useful, but just for everyone to keep in mind as we go through these results. But good questions anyway, and certainly as Sherry said, we'll provide that breakdown.
Yeah, and let's just remember this is just a real quick and dirty first cut look at the results. Phyllis?
Yeah, my question was just, were committee members to complete the evaluation form from the public open houses that we attended? Because I just assumed that we wouldn't do that because we'd have that discussion within our committee. Correct?
I assumed that you probably wouldn't as well. I mean, I guess there was nothing stopping you from doing so, but you have obviously the opportunity to provide that input with the committee yourself, so.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but that's okay. Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
I've got a question from Mylene. Can we get a percentage of feedback forms versus total population of the neighborhood in each open house? I guess while you're thinking about that, I guess I'm just wondering, is there any value in really tying the questionnaires? Yeah, I don't know. I personally, I think got to be careful that we don't go into too much analysis that is almost not really too relevant. But are we tying the results back to a particular meeting, or are we tying it back to the respondent's point of origin?
I think we can do both. We can show the results sort of based on where they're from, as well as by meeting, which Ron has mentioned. So I wasn't sure, Mylene, if you were asking like versus the larger population, like the actual population of that neighborhood, or if you were just wanting to know, like in any particular, like in the Skaha Estates meeting, how many people were from that area versus a different area. But
she's clarified, like example, Skaha Estates, how many live there and how many feedback forms did we get?
Okay, so we have like estimates of the population, but we don't have exact population numbers broken down by some of those communities. Again, we're just using the census, population per, we have an idea of how many dwellings there are and how many lots there are, and sort of have extrapolated, but yeah, so we can provide a rough idea of that, but again, it won't be scientific.
Okay, any other comments or questions to Alan and Sherry? Okay, Ron.
Yeah, thank you very much to the chair. And I just wanted to comment on Sherry's remark that it's not scientific, and we get that, but it is informative. And this kind of detail is helpful to some of us. And I really care. And I know that others may find it not relevant, but I do. So I really appreciate the breakdown. Thank you to the chair.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it.
And I'll just add, like, so when we bring forward a report of what we've heard and what the form said, if there's anything that you would like it broken down differently or a different type of analysis, I'm sure we can provide that as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sorry, the hound of the Baskervilles here. The delivery man is for dinner. Okay, so at this point then, my plan with the consultants was that we would have a discussion amongst us as committee members. What did we take away from this series of meetings? And to kick it off, I was going to suggest just 2 or 3 highlights from each of the 6 meetings. Sorry, 2 or 3 highlights in general. Like, let's just start in general. What are 2 or 3 points that popped out at you from this series of meetings that we've had? And I'm gonna, I don't know who would, anybody want to offer to go first? Wow. Okay, Phyllis.
Okay, so I was, what I found after attending 2 of the open house and then the panel discussion was that things became much more clear to me. And I think that, you know, I've been sitting on the committee now since we've started, and I just think like how much this ongoing exposure has been really helpful. So I think when we look at the information that we get back from people, we have to remember that they don't have as much background as we do. And so we're taking our commitment to this committee very seriously, but I think we can be confident about that because we have more knowledge. The other thing was that the importance of looking at road conditions in advance of accepting boundaries, and also drainage reviews and that sort of thing. So really doing a very thorough feasibility study beforehand, before actually drawing the boundary. To me, I thought that was extremely important. I also thought personally, you know, we have an irrigation district here, and we've been coping very well, and we've been able to keep our expenses, you know, pretty reasonable. But what I understand from listening is that it's, you know, it's probably not sustainable in the very long term. So I guess, you know, in talking to different people about this in our community, we see that there would be benefit for us because, you know, with our aging population, we can't expect that the volunteers can continue with this big responsibility forever. And then just my last point is that I received quite a bit of informal feedback from people who had been to the Vaso Lake meeting, Sun Valley Rolling Hills. And I was quite surprised actually that it was positive. It was quite positive, and people are thinking that this could be a good thing. So I was surprised about that. And that's my points.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to add just some general comments, things you took away from watching some of those 6 meetings? Okay, Kay, thank you.
It sounded to me that the people who are against incorporation are very passionate in their strongly held beliefs about that. And we need to be very mindful of that and respectful. I think that was somewhat across the board, that we need to do that. Having said that, the panel discussion was very informative, all the things that we need to think about, like Phyllis just said, like the roads, like the drainage, like the bridges. I wouldn't have thought of bridges. And making sure everything, if this were to proceed down the road, that things are in tip-top shape before we take it on. You know, I always say we don't know what we don't know. That was a perfect example of that. And it was like, oh my heavens. I think that we need to continue to provide opportunities to provide information, because again, as Phyllis says, I sat through 5 meetings and online. And so, I mean, it was so many of the pieces of information were reinforced in me. And we also had the opportunity to hear all the information on the fact sheets at our meetings. So, you know, we are coming from a different place altogether. And I see a responsibility we have to continue to provide opportunities and access to the information, and perhaps not just on the website.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Anyone else got some comments they'd like to contribute? David?
I watched all the meetings except the Carmine one. The Scahaw Estate one interested me the most, of course, because that's where I live. It was very well attended. Sorry about my voice today. I was in treatment today. The Scahaw Estates meeting was very well attended, percentage-wise, by the number of people that were in Scahaw Estates. I'd like to comment on the straw poll that was taken by one of the residents. He overwhelmingly vote for not incorporation. And that's about all the comments I have for our meeting.
David, sorry, maybe I'm the only one that didn't quite understand your last comment. Are you saying that the straw poll conducted by one individual at the meeting, that you feel that was accurate or inaccurate, or what were you saying relative to that?
In my own observation, walking around the subdivision, yes, I get the same feeling.
Okay, so in general, Scahaw Estate's not a ton of interest in incorporation.
No, but also I believe in many cases they haven't looked at all the facts. It's very hard to get a person who has a preconceived idea about what's going on to get them to actually look at the facts. In the general meeting on the Saturday, there were a lot of people there who came with the idea of not wanting incorporation. And they also think that we stacked the deck somehow in favor of incorporation other than just providing facts.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. All right, anybody else? All right, Ron, I've got a spot for you at the end, but if you want to provide your comments now, is that what you want to do, or are you just asking a question?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may speak for Kurt Hebert, he did ask me to make a comment on behalf of himself. And if I'm not allowed,
go ahead.
I won't. I'm okay not speaking. With respect to what Kurt said, he said something similar to what I've already heard. And he said a lot of people in his community very interested to being within the boundary. He thinks that's real important. He's talked to people in the community, and he feels, as David just said, exactly what David just said, that there's a lot of people who don't have information. And he even indicated that there is a short attention span. Some people, Mr. Chair, have a very short attention span, and they don't want too much information. And he said this is something that he found interesting because the information online too much, the information provided even too much. And that's an interesting feedback. He's also indicated that he has had requests to do a YouTube presentation for a lot of those people who have that shorter attention span. They don't want to look at the material. They like the idea of a YouTube presentation. And lastly, he asked if he could speak directly with Alan to provide some feedback, because he really regrets not being here tonight and he's fearful of missing out. So I don't know if that's possible, but I told him I would express that. And if that's possible, I'll leave it to Alan to reach out to him directly. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to
Good-
speak. on
Good
behalf
stuff.
of Mr. Hebert.
All right, thanks. Anybody else got any comments or major takeaways from the 6 meetings? While you're all cogitating there, I'm going to come up with my 3.
Me okay?
Oh, who's asking?
Mylene.
Okay, shoot, Mylene.
I'm going to try talking here and hopefully I don't lose connection. I attended all 6 meetings. I found the first 2 difficult to hear what was being said, as well as comments from the group attending. I couldn't hear the feedback or questions very well. I think we kind of fixed that as we moved forward. Technology got a little better. Camera was a little better. Mic was better. So the first meeting with Skaha Estates, I think it was, I had a hard time hearing what the comments were. Definitely a different feeling from each of the neighborhoods I found, from Upper Carmi in the boardroom versus Skaha Estates versus Rolling Hills versus, I think there definitely was a different feel versus each meeting. When it came to the Okanagan Falls one, there certainly seemed a lot more search for more information and more positive, wanting more, or maybe a bit more informed. Some of the questions and people that spoke had definitely jumped deeper into the information provided. I think there was a bit of a misinterpretation as to what the last panel discussion was about and for. I think there seemed to be people wanting to ask questions, not realizing that what the setup for the meeting was about. It's too bad that some of those questions couldn't have been brought up at the open houses of the neighborhoods that those people were a part of. I think the presentations themselves were great. I think the information was good. I think some of the questions were good. I just think it's too bad that there weren't more feedback from people at the open houses, the 5 open houses that were there. That's about it. Oh, one thing I did want to add was, once talking about drawing boundaries,
I'm going
We
to come back to that one, I think,
we haven't
Mylene.
really gotten into that. So I do have some feedback on that there, or some comments that I wanted to make about that. But as far as the meetings themselves, it's too bad that we didn't have the technology on our side at the beginning, especially that first meeting. But yeah,
Okay,
that's it.
all right. Well, I'm not seeing anybody else jumping at the bit here, so I'm going to come out with 2 or 3 of my own. First, I thought, just looking at all 6 meetings, I really think the input from the panel was really informative, and we're going to have to do something similar to that in the next study, I think, because that really, I think, got people interested, and maybe we should look at doing it early on in the process to to get people hooked and following us. I don't know. That's a detail, but I think it would be worthwhile repeating. Some excellent takeaways from me in there, like the positives about why you would do this: advocacy and accountability, and just huge issues for me. And I guess the negative is also accountability. Key messages about things to check out in advance: infrastructure. Just in terms of the meetings themselves, just an observation about human nature, I guess. Negatives appear to come out way stronger than positives. I sort of felt that many people were quite open and positive and interested in what we had to say, but they didn't really want to stick their hand up to say they wanted to move on to the next study when, if challenged. They were there, and I suspect they'd probably vote in that direction, but they're just not wanting to be confrontational, whereas the no's didn't seem to have any, they weren't shy at all about being confrontational from what I could see. And I have heard that, you know, people with negative opinions are far more likely to come out and express themselves at a rally or attend a meeting or whatever. It's way easier to get someone with a no out than it is someone who's in favor or even questioning. So those are just my three random thoughts. Anybody else got any views before we invite comments from, yeah, Bob? Take yourself off mute, Bob.
I think.
There you
One of the things I really enjoyed in all of the meetings was the tone of the meetings. I think the public is, as I remember, and Eleanor I'm sure can too, going way back, just about all the meetings, open houses from directors or whatever it might be, community meetings have always been conducted in a respectful manner. And this was no different. And I think Mr. Whitman was just trying to appeal to us harder of hearing and I very appreciated the fact that he spoke up a little more loudly when he did. But that aside, I think there's no question Director Olbrich favors incorporation. But I felt at many times that he used his position and took advantage of every opportunity to try to promote the merits of incorporation. And unfortunately, it was often illustrated by his criticism of the regional district and on a couple of points directly to staff. I felt badly about that. I don't think that was fair. We're supposed to operate in an impartial manner, an objective manner. And I think as hard as everybody worked, the consultants and the committee over this past year to make it that kind of a process, I think to some degree it's been undone. And I'm afraid that the study has been somewhat compromised.
Okay. All right, points noted. Eleanor. Take yourself off mute if you can find it, Eleanor.
There we go. Sorry, wrong button. It's just a general comment, and I don't, maybe it's just me, but I don't know quite how we'd address it given where we are. But because there are so many communities, it's almost set up to be an adversarial adventure, if you like. And I think, no disrespect, I think the panel and the committee have tried really, really hard to not let that happen. But it's kind of human nature, I guess, that, you know, my little community is more important than yours. And I get a lot of, okay, Falls is not going to tell us what to do. And sometimes it's very subtle. But one of the positive things that came my way from people I didn't expect to say anything or comment to me was that, wow, did I ever learn a lot? This isn't just going to happen quickly, is it? Yeah, well, no, it's not. And I think that was really important for people to understand that they're not going to suddenly wake up next week and find out they have to vote on something they don't really understand. So I think that part of it, all the information was really good. So thank you.
Okay. If it's any consolation, I remember being told by someone up at CSRD and also someone in the provincial government as I was trying to merge the boundary study and the incorporation study into one exercise. I was informed that sometimes it takes people, you know, you're best not to rush people at this. And this is your chance. So don't rush people to it. Take your time, let them inform themselves. And similarly, I had a lot of people also just thankful for the level of information and not real. And they definitely hadn't got their heads around it, and I doubt, some of them will study it further. Some of them clearly, weren't intending to, but they knew it was there. So they could go and they could, if and when we get deeper into this, they now know that it's there. And it's like a bank or a library. Useful asset. Eleanor, you're raising your finger again?
Yeah, if I could just make one more.
No, you got yourself on mute again. Say it again.
Now, am I muted or not muted?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, I didn't want to forget this because I thought it was interesting. One person made a comment to me. I really appreciated how the information was given. They were not talking down to us. So that's a compliment to you.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Sherry. Okay, Kay, further point?
I just want to be careful that when we talk about people, the people who have strongly held beliefs against incorporation or going down that road any further, that we're not referencing them as that they're being negative or that they're being confrontational, that in fact they're just expressing their views, their strongly held views. And I think we just need to have greater awareness around that.
Note to self. Okay, so we've heard from the committee and on just sort of general points, and I'm just wondering if staff or ex officio have got any sort of key takeaways that were important to them. Ron, I saw you had your hand up there, so at least I think I saw you had your hand up. So if you want to shoot with your key takeaways.
Oh, yes, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to say your comment about don't rush, I think that was well made. And I think that's the real value of this process. And so thank you to everybody, all the committee members, the consultants and staff, all. I thought as a takeaway, it really got better. Every open house got better. Everyone, and you could see, and I think that's important to note because those people at the first meeting got the short end of the stick. They did not get the best. And those people on the last meeting got the best. And that's interesting. When we look at the results, I'd be curious because that first meeting, we had a technological failure, which Daniel Francisco was just amazing. I felt sorry for Sherry and for Alan. I was sitting there embarrassed by the technological collapse and how well they held it together. And so that group didn't get the best, but they didn't get the best at the technological. The audio wasn't the best. So that's interesting. A second point is on the FAQ. I know we talked about having an FAQ. I looked at Blind Bay. They have an excellent FAQ page. We don't seem to have an FAQ page, but that may be something we can work on in the future, do better at. With respect to Mr. Daly's remarks, my apologies to him. He's clearly offended. And to him, I apologize specifically. To the rest of the committee and staff in particular, if staff felt that I was inappropriate, my apologies to staff. That was never my intent. And certainly to the committee. I can say for the benefit of Mr. Daly, and he may or may not know this, but there was feedback from the community after the first meeting, and I was requested to speak by the chair, specifically 2 examples. When I answered questions or spoke, again, for the comfort of Mr. Daly, I always spoke truth and fact and to the best of my ability. And I was not intending to taint the process at all. I take that, I take those words seriously. I heard you. And I am going to reflect on that, and I will speak to others. And anybody here who wants to add on to that, there were many of you who witnessed those meetings. I'd love to hear from all of you who feel the same, and I'd love to hear from all of you who feel differently. But that's a pretty serious allegation, and I take it as such. And so thank you for speaking your concern. I like to hear and to learn, and so thank you for that. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Any other comments from staff? Christy, David? Yeah, Christy?
I just want to say that I'm really impressed with the committee and the consultants. I think there's a ton of information going out there. I think whether people have short attention spans or not, the information is there in many different ways and easy for consumption. Director O'Rourke, there is a Q&A. It's quite comprehensive, and we work on it every time we receive questions in the office. It's on the Regional Connections site. Go have a look at that, because you know, it's fairly thorough, but you may be getting more questions from the public, and we'd love to post those with the answers on there as well. So by all means, send me emails if you've got any questions that you'd like posted the answers for. So other than that, I think good on you all. You're doing an amazing job.
Okay. Pat ourselves on the head. Just on that Q&A thing, easy to get out of the habit, but if you do hear a question, it's easy to just send an email to Christy. Hey, you know, I had a question, or go to the Q&A site and enter it there, and it will get answered. Useful tool. Okay, thanks, Christy. David, I'm not sure if you heard too many of the sessions. If you have any takeaways, you're more than welcome to offer them now.
No, yeah, thank you. I was unable to attend a couple of them just from previous bookings, and so it was a decision made not to attend any of them, to not give the perception of bias to one community or another, that there is a provincial representative there. So I do apologize for that. On Saturdays, my partner works, so I'm with my kids. So I could not attend the panelist either, but I'm in the midst of just reviewing, because that one was shared through the YouTube link. So I'm watching all of that right now. So I'm about 3/4 through that, and also heard the comments about the roads in particular. And so that was, especially the Sorrento Blind Bay, the most recent incorporation study, that was a bigger piece of that particular study in terms of getting the third party to analyze not the entire road network, but random sections of the road network, just to essentially audit the Ministry of Transportation analysis, their self-analysis of their roads. So yeah, so that's definitely a recommendation that would probably continue forward should this committee and this study go forward another phase, would be certainly working with Maudie to do the exact same thing, as well as that negotiation that happened. Sorry, I'm skipping forward a bit, but the negotiation that happened to upgrade some of the existing roads before incorporation. So that was a neat little negotiation that went on. So thank you, Alan and Sherry, and as well as previous staff member Kaylee Laidlaw for arranging that. So we certainly have a great precedent to work on.
Yeah.
So I also want to echo that from what I've seen so far and the comments that I've heard so far, this community is doing really good work. It seems the information is being received, even if it's the strong feelings against incorporation. It still sounds like they are, besides the reluctant ones that don't want to go to the website, it still sounds like lots of people are reading the information. And even though their stance right now might be against, at least they're processing it. So to Matt's comment about more engagement, certainly, you know, with the next, if there's a next phase, that can certainly happen. And there will be more engagement through the survey. And if the committee wants to somehow link in some other further engagement with that survey, I mean, that's a possibility, right? Rather than the consultants doing it, if the committee members make themselves available during that survey time for questions, that could elicit more engagement as well. Sorry, that was a bit longer than I thought. Thank you.
Okay, no, it's good. All right, Jim, you're sitting there patient, quiet. You attended a couple of meetings.
Well, yeah, I was at 3, and like Phyllis said, I kept learning more and more with every meeting. What I was, I guess a lot of people have said what I was going to say or had done, but I guess the couple of comments that I had is people come up to me at the end and say, wow, I learned a lot. And that changed my view on certain things. And I thought that was exactly what the purpose of the meetings was for. So I'll just share that point.
Okay, thanks, Jim. All right, I'm gonna see if we've got any other points specific to where and how we would choose a boundary. And Alan and Sherry have got a detailed process that they're gonna walk us through. So I don't want to get too far into this, but were there some key thoughts that you heard that you thought were relevant to how we go about drawing that line on the map? And I'm not really asking you to sort of hear, well, David said that Skaha Estates isn't really all that interested, so they're clearly out. I got that too, but I'm thinking more, what are the kind of things we need to be thinking about? And so just I'll kick that one off. My three thoughts on that one: for us, agricultural land, is that in or out? We heard two different views on that. And agricultural land for us is probably vineyard, winery type land. And so I think we need to think about that. I think there's a big difference between vineyard, winery businesses and hay farms and cattle ranches. I mean, personally, I'd rather have the cattle ranch, but that's just where I've spent my 30 years. Jim's done his 20 on a vineyard, so he'd rather have the vineyard. But I can really see why you wouldn't want a cattle ranch in the middle of or a hay farm in the middle of your area. Whereas I can see that, like the West Kelowna guy said, yeah, a winery might work well. Second point, do we try and include several communities, different communities? And we can get into all the data we want. I'm sure that, it may also come down to just, is there a good fit between these different communities? And that was one of the questions that was asked, do you feel an affinity for your neighboring communities? So I think that's a really important point, because if you're trying to govern afterwards and there's just no synergy between different groups, it's going to be tough sledding. Third point, just back on infrastructure issues. That's going to be critical. And it's not just roads. It's sewer, drainage, even hillside sloughing, if I look at East Side Road. So there's some big things to think about there. So those are my three. Anyone else got some thoughts to take into mind as we try to start this next chunk, which is where do we actually draw the line? Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Crossing the bridge to the north of Bouquet Falls, or
Yep.
sorry, yeah. So we've got just a few houses there, just as you start to go up Waterman's Hill. What about going to the left, heading south and going up to See You Later Ranch? All of those houses along that area. Nothing's really been said about once you cross the bridge on that side. Just a question on that area itself. That's all.
So Area D does include, as you said, that couple of houses going north up to and including the fish farm. And it also includes about a dozen or 15 going south on Green Lake Road. And that's presently within Area D. So, yep, point noted, Eileen. Okay, anyone else got some comments or thoughts? Kay?
It's perhaps more of a question, because if I recall from the presentation from Sherry and how they take the technical data or And I talked about the ingredients for the cake, and you need certain ingredients in order for this to be viable, if I understand that correctly. And one of the ingredients would be a certain amount of property assessment. You have to have a big enough population to be able to pay for incorporation. And I was also hearing West Kelowna talk about the challenges they experienced. And it sounded like some communities may have been brought in somewhat against many people's will in that community. You know, there was a certain level of reluctance. And I guess I'm curious about how the balance is going to be found between having enough of all the ingredients to come up with a boundary configuration and honoring people's preference not to be included in it. So that's a question that perhaps Sherry and Alan can answer or maybe show us. But that's just where my thoughts have been going.
Okay, or if you want to leave that, yeah, you can take a run at it now, Sherry or Alan, or you can, that'll be, I mean, this is the meat of your sort of next couple of sessions, so.
Mhm. Yeah, we can just take a quick run at it, but as you point out, Matt, that this is going to be a key topic from this point forward for the committee, or one of the key topics at least. It's an excellent question. It's a great analogy, kind of the ingredients for the cake. I think, you know, the committee's job in looking at the boundary, and our job as the advisors to the committee, is to really define a boundary that makes sense from several different perspectives. From kind of a servicing perspective being really key. So we want to make sure that we keep certain service areas contained within a boundary. We don't want to be splitting service areas where we can avoid that. From a land use perspective, Matt, you talked about agricultural lands. There's class 9 farmlands we want to worry about. From an assessment perspective, as Kay mentioned, we need to make sure that there's a robust enough assessment base so that if an incorporated area chooses to move forward and look at different kinds of services that the electoral area may not have, that there's the means to provide those. We want to look at also from a planning perspective, so that there's kind of some thought given to future growth, because often, and certainly this was a sentiment that we heard in some of the meetings, you know, places may choose to incorporate so that they can look at ways to promote future growth. So all of that all of that is kind of important to bring to the table. And then, as Kay mentioned, on top of that, or in addition to that, we look at what are the sentiments of the different communities. And that's one of the ingredients in there. The job of the committee is really to set any possible future incorporation area, if should the community wish to go there and the committee ultimately make that recommendation. Any possible future incorporation area, set it up for success, make it sure it's robust, it's feasible, it's viable. And so the boundary is going to be really critical to that calculation. One thing we can say for sure is that there's no perfect boundary. Whatever you come up with, there are going to be some people who really do not like it. And that's just kind of the nature of the game, unfortunately. We'll minimize that where we can, but in some cases it will be difficult to eliminate that altogether. So I think the balancing it's a bit of an art, it's a bit of a science. We want to bring as much data to the table so that the committee feels that whatever it comes up with will be defensible. And we want to also, with that data, we want to be able to give the committee the arguments and the counter arguments to respond to questions as to why an area was put in or why it was taken out. So there's all those kinds of things that we'll just have to get into as we start to do that assessment. And we'll look for those balances and try to come up with a few options for the committee to consider. And as we go through each of those options, we as the advisors to the committee will explain very carefully the rationales behind those options. And hopefully be able to explain and defend why particular areas, which some folks on the committee may feel are no-brainers to put in, or alternatively no-brainers to keep out, why we have taken perhaps a different perspective, and then ultimately it will be the committee that needs to make the decision, but we'll put forward a number of options to help inform that decision.
All right. Anyone else sit through those sessions with some takeaways on boundary? Go ahead, Phyllis.
Well, I just to sort of add on to Kay's point about, when you look at the criteria to see whether or not you actually may have enough, population and tax base to be able to make a go of it. One of the things that came up at that panel discussion was to talk about a growth strategy. And I guess, when I heard, my ears sort of peaked up a little bit, because I did hear something about, I think it was called a vertical fruit something that was going to happen at Okanagan Falls. And so I'm thinking, like, for us, on the committee, if we don't have a working knowledge, or not necessarily a working knowledge, but at least a glimmer of knowledge about this growth strategy and how that fits in, or potentially fits into, a boundary, how can we make those decisions? So I think that as a committee, we need to have a little bit better understanding before we can help with, formulating a boundary. So that's one of my points that I wanted to bring forward. And then the other one was just around fire response. So here at Vaso Lake, we don't have any hydrants. And of course, we're all concerned about fire. So I did a little bit of research and talked to the deputy fire chief. And, what I found was that, they, give them many pats on the back, because it's a tough job, and it's a volunteer job. But I think that, they could use some resources that could be accessed through an incorporation. And I think, like, that fire response time to us here at Vaso Lake is extremely important, because basically we've got a lake here, but if they don't get here with their tender, and even their tender doesn't have enough water capacity to put out even a single residence. So, they need the resources to be able to have a bigger tender, or to have submersible pumps. And, there's all kinds of ways that we could help a fire department if we had more resources. And that's important if Vaso Lake is a part of the incorporation.
Okay. Good point.
Mhm.
And one thing I'm taking away from that, and I'm just going to suggest that for our next meeting, maybe we just have a quick 5-minute summary of all the major developments that are planned within Area D. And not necessarily that all of them are going to go through, but at least people would be aware of them.
Mhm.
Okay. And I don't want to get into that tonight, but I see that as an agenda item, a brief 5-minute summary for next meeting. Ron, briefly.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, to Phyllis's comment, and for the benefit of all here, we do have mutual aid amongst our fire departments. And so Vaso Lake, for example, you've got Willowbrook nearby, and Oliver. So when there is something happening, the fire chiefs, this is a important detail, they can get help real fast. So it's not that one truck that'll show up. So that's important for you to know in your community. And that's true whether we're a municipality or not, that mutual aid is there. To the regional growth strategy, I am familiar with our regional growth strategy. And for those of you who don't know, we have 9 electoral areas in our regional district. We have 6 municipalities. We have 7 growth areas. 6 of those growth areas are the 6 municipalities. 1 is us. Now that is coming through review again at the board this year, but I appreciate a lot of people on the committee don't have enough information on that detail, and I agree, you probably don't. But that information is known. I know a great deal if anybody wants to hear from me. With respect to Mr. Taylor's comment, the chair's comment about agricultural land, I've done a great deal of work on this, and I've spoken to many in many areas. Summerland is a municipal municipality, and they're a municipal district. At Silga in 2019, I was advised by other municipalities that a model we should consider for ours would be similar to the Summerland model, which has a wonderful diverse mix, a lot of strength, but they've got agriculture, a lot of agriculture, and they've got wineries, and they've got beautiful neighborhoods that are disconnected one from the other, like Trout Creek and the lower town, but they're very successful, and we need to be mindful. The benefits that are benefit all those areas in Summerland, and likewise they could benefit areas in our community. McLean Creek Road, just a final point. I have spoken to a lot of people out there. I don't know that there's nobody on this committee from that area. Brian Thomas, for example, the Thomas Creek Fire, the Thomas family has been here a few generations. I'm sure Eleanor Walker could speak to this further, but Brian Thomas has told me that he's very much in favor of being part of a municipality. They have a lot of agricultural holdings. His father was one of the strongest against in that last vote that was around 1989 or so. That kind of detail to me means something. I like to hear it. I like to know it. And I think this committee would want to hear that and know that as well. So I think this is an excellent conversation. And I just like, and I thank the chair for allowing me to contribute. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, good. Anybody else got some comments or thoughts on where to draw the line? Eleanor?
I don't know. It's not a question or comment. It's just something one of the gentlemen said, and his words were, beware of provincial interference on boundaries. And I just wondered how important is that? And I'm not sure I know exactly what he meant.
I don't remember hearing that comment, but okay. David?
I don't know the background of it, but I do recall that comment, Eleanor, and you're right. It was, actually now I forget which incorporation it was, but the comment was about the MLA. So it wasn't necessarily a ministry that interfered, it was an MLA. So obviously there was something local and political going on, and an association, a community got a hold of the MLA and said, we need you to step in and stop this from happening. And that's what happened in that case, from what it sounds like. In terms of other ways, I suppose, in which the province might interfere, I don't want to say interfere, but at least raise a big caution is depending on what the boundary will be, and this won't come into play until the next phase anyway, depending on what the boundary will be, well, one way or another, there will be consultation with Indigenous peoples and First Nations in the area. And if you have a really big boundary that includes a lot of Crown land or undeveloped land, the more of that boundary you include, the more interest there will be, and perhaps some more concerns, but we don't know until we actually start the engagement about those lands. So I mentioned that to Matt already, just as a consideration in the long run, and then I can mention now to the committee as a consideration in the long run. It really shouldn't sway your opinion one way or the other. It's just another factor to add into it, that when it comes to the incorporation piece, the province has a duty, we must consult with all of the identified First Nations in the area. So I just want to raise that.
Okay, excellent.
Matt, I can comment just very briefly, just for the sake of completion on Eleanor's question, memory there. Yes, that was, I believe, Councillor Doug Finlater from West Kelowna, and the issue he was referring to was the committee in West Kelowna wanted to include within the boundary Crystal Mountain, which had some assessment base that would have been very helpful. It also had some commercial interests that would have been good from a planning perspective. And the committee the MLA of the day, Rick Thorpe, who was a minister in the Crown, he interfered, and allegedly, I don't recall the interference. I was there at the time. I don't recall it, but apparently there was some concern that he interfered to have that boundary line drawn with Crystal Mountain on the other side of the boundary.
Okay. All right. Any other last call for anyone's takeaways relative to thoughts on how we draw the line? Phyllis?
I have something to add.
Okay, we'll go Mylene and then Phyllis.
I think in the panel discussion, I believe it was the mayor of Clearwater, Merlin Blackwell, that had said that they had wished they had spent a little more time on the boundary line drawing as one of the outlying communities or neighborhoods they would have not included based on, I believe it was the roads and the cost of roads going out to that community. And that in hindsight, they would have not included that outlying community. I just thought I'd add that tidbit. I think that was correct.
Infrastructure.
In his head.
That was right. Sorry, I just heard it a couple of hours ago. That's why it's fresh in my mind. Yeah, he said there's a 5 to 7 kilometer road and water pipe to that community that that was the biggest issue, I believe.
Okay. All right, Phyllis, last
Yeah,
call.
just further to that point, I can't remember which of the panelists did talk about, if you are, and I think it might have been Paul, but I'm not sure. If you are, if you have to go back to the table and you have and somebody wants to be included into your incorporated area, that's something that, is a very, basically you're going through the whole process again, and it's pretty involved. So you want to make sure that when we're doing our consideration, that we're thinking long-term, right? And long and hard about this, rather than, thinking that we're going to come back to it later and it's going to be something that's going to be very easy to do if you want to add an area in. That's all.
Okay. All right, thank you. Alan, you look like you're about to say something.
Sorry, Matt. Yes, I apologize for jumping in. I'm really glad. Thank you, Phyllis, for raising that point. I'm really glad you raised that. It was a point that Sherry and I talked about on the drive back to Kelowna afterwards, because we were both a little puzzled by that comment, because typically, and David can correct me if I'm wrong here, but typically smaller boundary extensions happen quite frequently, like with small numbers of lots and stuff. So depending on the size of the area, that may have been a factor. We also think it may be because there was some crown land that was brought in that example that I believe was Barrier mentioned, or maybe it was Clearwater anyway. And we think if that were the case, that might have triggered some of the First Nations consultation that David referred to a moment ago, which would have by necessity slowed things down quite a bit. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a lengthy, drawn-out process. It depends on the size of the area you want to bring in and whether there's crown land in that area, perhaps some other factors as well.
Thank you.
So then would you be able to help us with those parameters then? So as we go forward to assist you in helping that boundary, we have that information?
Yeah, we're gonna want to provide basically as much information as possible so that the committee has its eyes open on all of these things.
Okay, I'm sensing that we're going to go approximately 10 to 15 minutes over here. Just looking briefly, see any anaphylactic reaction to that one? Okay. So I'm sensing we're running out of steam here on sort of takeaways regarding boundaries. I've got 3 items left here. The first is open mic for Ron for a few minutes for your thoughts. Second, I want to talk very briefly on communications. I've got just an action item I'd like to propose. And third, I'd like to hear from our 2 public members, Bruce Hay and Judy Garner, if they've anything to say. So that's my plan. Ron?
My apologies, I had trouble finding my mouse. Thank you very much to the chair and to the committee. I have nothing to add, and just thank you for allowing me to speak and participate. It means a lot to me. And I have many people who have asked me over the course of the 5 meetings and elsewhere. Some have asked me why I didn't speak more. And that's a real challenge. I try so hard to listen, and I feel at times that my words aren't welcome. And that's a hard place to be. And so I thank you very much.
Okay. It's a balancing act. Communications. Some of you will have seen that we had a bit of a blow up on Facebook. We had excellent coverage in SCAHA Matters between the director, myself, our ad, etc. And my comment was from the community association, but they were all relative to these open house sessions. And I'd just like to propose that something we talked about in the past, we actually act on, and that is that we, for the balance of this project, as we're gearing towards the end and actually, come summer, we're going to have a finished product here, right? So maybe now is the time to start taking up some space at cost in SCAHA Matters and having a dedicated short brief write-up from the committee, speaking to issues that I guess I would work out with the consultant and hearing from you in a session in the previous sessions, what's relevant, what to bring forward. I am, if you were to go along with this idea, I'm proposing that I'm not going to write it. And I would ask if Kay and Bob would write it. And then perhaps we get some editorial feedback to them from myself and the consultants. And so what I see is that we would work from the most recent meeting as sort of where we're coming from and where we're going to, which is presentation of a recommendation as to where the boundary is over the next sort of 3 or 4 months. And we would have an item, 3/4 of a column in SCAHA Matters, if Mylene can find it for us. And we'd start bringing the public along, and with luck, they would look to that column to see what the boundary group is up to at the moment, and gradually we'd lead them along towards our final recommendation. So that's my thought. Feedback. Vi, I can see you nodding.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think a lot of people do read the SCAHA Matters more than going to the RDOS site and whatever. And the more the public knows, the happier they are and we are. So yes, and I know there is a cost involved, but we get nothing for nothing, unfortunately. So yeah, I agree.
Okay. You touched on the issue of cost, and I have spoken with Christy, and we can find, my understanding is we can find the money, and I see Christy nodding her head there. So. Kay. And just while Kay's finding the mic here, I want to be really clear that this is not going to be, first off, we're not going to write this by committee. Okay. There's going to be some trust involved, but I think that's worked okay so far. And my second point is just that this is not going to be, you're not going to see a byline that says this is written by Kay Medland and Bob Daly. Okay. It's coming from the committee. Okay. Kay, found the mic?
Yes, I found the mic. I just wanted to say that I'd be certainly willing to work with Bob and draft up something for review. If Bob's good to go.
Okay. All right. I realize it's getting late in the meeting, so I'm not looking for overwhelming enthusiasm. Are there any concerns with this approach? Okay. Well, with luck, we can have a discussion with Mylene afterwards and see if we can bring that plan into reality. Okay. Now we are near the end of the meeting and we have time allocated for the public at the end of every meeting. So we have a Mr. Bruce Hay. If you're able to find the mute button, and if you have any questions of us, we'd very much like to hear what you have to say. Okay, well, I'm going to invite you to come forward in the next few minutes. If you find the mute button and you've got something you'd like to bring to our attention, we'd very much like to hear it. And I should say as well that you know, we did reach out to some of the individuals. You know, there was one individual who didn't feel he'd had opportunity to ask his question, and so he did leave early. I've reached out to him by email and on Facebook and invited him to, well, we didn't hear you then, but, you know, hey, we'll take your question today. So I haven't heard anything further. Judy Gardner, have you anything you'd like to add to the discussion tonight?
Hi, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Just a point. There's two different places on the website that you can tap on the link, and one of them simply doesn't work, and then the other does. And perhaps that's why you're not getting as many people joining these meetings, is because they just can't. If they're going to the wrong link, they're not getting in. And I don't know if that's something that can be fixed or not. And I thought the committee, I don't have any questions. I think the committee tonight raised the important points that came out of the 5 meetings in the panel. And that was really good. No questions from me tonight.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Judy. Mr. Hay?
He's not connecting.
Okay. Bruce, stepping way out here, if you want to take a pen, and I will stay on for a few minutes afterwards. My number is 403-607-1080, and I'd welcome your call afterwards. And I'll stay online afterwards. So folks, I think we are near the end of our meeting here, at the end of our meeting. So I lied. I said I was going to keep an extra 10 minutes. We can do that. No, we won't. Okay, Phyllis, question from you, and then I think we're ready to go.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for doing such a great job, everybody at the meeting tonight, especially you, Matt. Just wondering the date for the next meeting, please. Date and time.
Yes. Next meeting, Alan?
Oh, Christy, can you help me here with this one?
It's the scheduled meeting, is it?
I know we went back and forth a few times on that, Matt, and yes, I don't have it in front of me.
I have April 13th in my calendar. Wednesday, April 13th. I don't know if that's correct. Okay. That's what I have in my calendar.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you, David.
Okay. April 13, next meeting, and that's when we're going to get your full rehash of the
yes, correct.
open houses, etc. And then we will also start moving forwards on the boundary stuff.
That's right.
Okay, Christy, you have a question?
Just a quick question, Judy. Can I trouble you to contact me tomorrow, or maybe in the chat, just throw a phone number if you're comfortable doing that? I just want to walk through those links with you, because I know there are several different links, and I've tried several of them, And one will typically redirect for me and put me back to the area where we need to be. So if that's not happening for everybody, I'd love to make sure that we are consistent and that people can actually get in. So if you have a few minutes, that would be lovely to touch base and just talk about where you're finding that.
I'll call you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, folks. I'll take a motion to adjourn. And Mr. Hay, I'll stay on a few minutes afterwards. Motion from Phyllis, seconded by Kay. All those in favor? Okay, folks. Seconding on Phyllis's comment, this was a useful meeting. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts on the last 6 meetings. Thank you. Good night, folks.